What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. This is going to be another album review for a new 2021 release, and I'm going to be reviewing the latest album from the band Kal-El entitled Dark Majesty. Now this is the band's 5th studio album in their discography. This is a band from Norway, a Norwegian stoner rock doom stoner metal style band, and this was released to Majesty Mountain Records. As much as I've been discovering many new bands along the way through the journey of new albums, including bands such as Dread Sovereign, Black Midi, Genghis Tron, etc., this was a band that I did come across through my journey on Bandcamp, as I wanted to discover different bands along the lines in that type of metal sound. As much as I have loved albums like Dread Sovereign's Alchemical Warfare, and the album's cover art really did surprise me, and was intrigued to discover this band for the first time. And once this album was released, I decided to then purchase the album, and I should have reviewed this album at the time of its release, and I apologize madly, because I think that this album is absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt, another really brilliant and awesome album. A lot of the direction into this band's discography, they incorporate that aesthetic sound on fuzzy guitar sounds and destructive, booming, attacking drums that sounded big and violent sounding, and with an atmosphere all around here where it brings in a lot of the fantasy tones on psychedelia, and that's what I do love on other bands as well, like with Sleep and Caius, etc. So I think that Kal-El is a band that absolutely deserves a lot more attention. There's a lot of that majority onto the album that, as I was listening to this all the way through, I was diving into the band's musicianship, as it was just incredibly adventurous and gripping all at once here, especially on these brilliant tracks like Temple, Spiral, the title track Dark Majesty, Vimana, and some really good sounds of production and tonality. The vocals from the captain on this album, earlier on as I was listening to this, really did remind me on a bit of like an Ozzy Osbourne kind of vein, but then as the later tracks go, with the cleaner vocal performances and harmonics of the range, it does remind me weirdly on a bit of Troy Sanders from Mastodon fame, and as well as some of these guitar riffs from Duffy and Josh. These riffs were brutal, they were brooding, and as crushing, especially onto the awesome sounds on the distorted fuzzed up tones, that it just sounds cranked up, as it was just a loud and hateful sound. The bass guitar work from Johnson, his bass work is really consistent and huge into the mix sounds, and this bass adds in a lot onto its own definition. It does remind me of Al's bass parts from Sleep, because his bass sound on an album like The Sciences, for example, where it's just all loud but balanced so well, and that's what I immediately thought about as I was listening to the bass tone on this album. The drumming on this album was really good, as that they were bringing in a lot of delivery and dynamics, and the whole sound of the band do involve together on such a dramatic and wonderfully performed arrangement of the band's music. And the guitar improvisational solos, a lot on minor pentatonics, they were all in this really spaced out, trippy, psychedelic rock goodness. And a lot of the lyrics on this album all the way through were pretty diverse and surprisingly different to what you would really expect and think about for a stoner style band, because most of other bands incorporate lyrics involving LSD to drugs, cannabis and weed and marijuana, etc. However, with the look of the cover art and what you would really guess as you hear the lyrics, this is all based on a dedication style of work on science fiction, and I think that absolutely works out with the additional paths of these fantastic vocal deliveries and these assaulted and incredible markability on guitar riffage that sounded absolutely savage. The only gripe that I would say about the album is that some of the later tracks do go on a little bit long, that it does get a little bit repetitive, as most of the tracks here can be pretty lengthy. But needless to say, there's a lot of that amazing stuff on this album to really dive into what's going on this album. Various time signatures and speed differences along the way with many stoner metal, stoner rock bands. Look no further with this band's album Dark Majesty, and as I was going into this album, it was completely diverse and intriguing with me that maybe this could possibly be one of my favourite records of the year so far, and definitely give this band a lot of the support. Look them up on social media. They do have Bandcamp, as I've mentioned earlier, and as well as they have a Facebook. Pick up this album if you are really diving into some new bands along your path of new records. Kal-El's Dark Majesty is an awesome record with its antics, its inspiration, and the overall worth of the material that does not need to be missed out on whatsoever. So that's all I would like to say about Dark Majesty from Kal-El, and let me know what you think of this album if you have heard of it in the comments down below. And I'm going to give this album a 9 out of 10, and I am very, very confident that by repeating this album more and more, a lot of the stuff on this album would start to dig into my eardrums better than before, as that I am really impressed with this style of production. The sound of the band here sounded phenomenal. Definitely check it out. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.